If you're a parent, you've probably noticed the world is moving pretty fast, and its ideas are moving right along with it. And if you're like me, you might not be too happy about some of those ideas, especially when you realize they're being forced on our kids at an extremely young age. So, what can we do about that? That's an important question given that we as parents are ultimately responsible for raising our children. Talking to our little ones is a great place to start, and reading to them is a great way to promote discussion. That brings me to a vital resource I want you to be aware of. It's a picture book for readers aged 4 through 9, which introduces the topic of compelled speech to children. Ollie Adamson's Strawberries Are Red, a story about compelled speech, gently introduces this topic and is sure to encourage great discussion between you and your little one. Freedom of speech is essential, and our children should be made aware of this. This book is available on Amazon, and I encourage you to order your copy today. We owe it to our kids. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Clean Libertarian Podcast. How's your week going? How are you guys doing out there? For me, it's been a pretty interesting week, and it was interesting because I did something way outside of my character. I put in my 2 weeks at my former employer, and I walked out mid-shift. I made it about a week into that 2-week notice, and just had enough. Handed over my keys and said, F this place, I'm out of here. And it was liberating. I'll tell you that. Instantly in the moment, like I'm freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, calling the wife and everything else. I called the sponsor. I called, all my people in recovery. And eventually I got calmed down. But man, I just feel stress free. I feel so much better. This next gig I'm going to offers a lot of autonomy. It's going to allow me to do the job at hand, and it's also still, working with addicts in recovery. And so, it's checking a lot of boxes for me, so I'm really hopeful for the future. And, on to a new chapter, right? On to a new thing. But, I have a really great episode lined up for you guys for this upcoming week. This is my buddy Red from Twitter. Red is someone who spent quite a bit of time in the military. He served overseas, saw a lot of what happened, and came back a different person. It certainly helped change his viewpoints, made him extremely anti-war, and also more liberty-minded. And we just kind of talked about that. He's very well spoken. This is a great conversation. And if you or a loved one, has served or along those lines, you will get a lot out of this conversation. So without any further ado, here is Red. All right. What's up, Red?
Not much. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing really good. We followed each other on Twitter for quite some time, man. I've made a lot of really good friends on that damn app, even though there's a bunch of crazy ass people. You're one of the good ones that stuck out.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I had signed up for Twitter like long before I started using it. And I think you were amongst like the first 50, maybe, even if I remember correctly, that I really started paying attention to.
Right on, man. OG account over here. I kind of the same thing, man. I started the account. I never used it,
Mm-hmm.
And then Facebook got to be too much. And then I just twisted off down into Twitter.
Oh yeah, I had to ditch Facebook. It was hard. It was like jumping out of a plane. But once you were out, it was pretty simple after that.
It's almost like one of those things, man, where once you make that transition, you're really glad that you don't. I don't know when you got off, but I haven't. I've been off for a while, so I didn't have to see any of the people I really care about listen to their takes on COVID or the pandemic, which was really nice.
Yes, correct. And that would have been bad. Well, once I started making my transition to a more liberty-minded philosophy, it got hard to maintain some relationships because when people chime in, I was just like, wait, do you understand what you're saying? Like, do you understand that the high order effects of what you're saying? Or are you only thinking about now in the moment? And I actually lost a good friend because of it. I haven't been able to talk to him in almost 3 years.
Damn, man.
Yeah.
That's a damn shame. I mean, and there's a lot of misconceptions, that you mentioned liberty or any of the little slogans we use, and it's just gaslighting, man, or just wrong stereotypes, that are
Yes.
attached to it.
Oh God, yeah. There's so many. I mean, of course, everybody will be a pedo in
Uh,
Afghanistan. Like, no, I don't think you understand how that would work. I think it'd be exactly the opposite.
yeah, it would be exactly the opposite. As a matter of fact, it would be swift action. That's one of
Yes.
the things that I also like to bring up. So, like, and we'll get into, but since you mentioned it, like when I was in jail, awaiting trial, I got in a fight, and so they put me up on, they call it ADSEG. It's like
Hmm.
the timeout in jail. It's like jail inside of jail, and when they pulled all of us out to go to court, the pod across the hallway from us was the actual pedo pod. And
Mm.
those guys automatically, the second they're brought into the system, they're put directly up on this pod, and like these guys are smiling and laughing with each other because they know they're about to get out. Like
Hmm.
there is no fear whatsoever, in
Yep.
their eyes. That, like, man, they are protected. I mean, you want to talk about a protected class? Pedos are
Hmm.
protected in the penal system. you
Well, I
know
guess that plays into what we were just saying, because there you've got people with nothing left to lose,
mm-hmm.
who are not above visiting violence on people, and you got to separate them because they will. Nobody likes them.
Yeah, no, not a soul, and nor should they. you
No.
know But no, you had reached out. You just kind of made a tweet that you wanted to talk about your time in service, and I always love hearing about guys who, your stories of when you came into the service and as opposed to
Hmm.
when you got out of the service. And I'm just going to let you take it from there, man. Where did you join, and what was going on, and where are you at now?
Um, I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, born and raised for 18 years. I was a high school dropout, dropped out my senior year, fell in with a probably not the best group of people who didn't have my best interests at heart. Um, and then once I realized it, it was like, well, okay, I got to do something. And back then it was a pretty small town. I had a limited group of friends, and everywhere I wanted to go, they would be. So I looked into the military. I got suckered into the army, joined in '97. But I had no like political philosophy. Didn't come from a particularly political household. It wasn't a daily topic of conversation. So I just I was raised around guns. I just always figured that's just the way it is. I'd never heard anybody argue against it because I lived in South Texas, and no one's running around trying to take our guns away.
Right.
Um, and so I didn't even meet or understand what a progressive was, so I joined the army. Um, Now I'm not progressive, obviously, but there's something to be said about hearing the other side. And so slowly, as you meet people throughout your time in service, you move from station to station. You hear different points of view. Sometimes you're offended by them, and sometimes they sink in if they're said by the right person who knows what they're talking about. And you think on that. Um, my biggest sea change happened in 2012. Like the seeds had been planted earlier than that. First two deployments, especially Iraq, was I didn't feel quite right about a lot of stuff in Iraq, but I couldn't put my finger on it because I didn't understand why it was wrong. Because politics and the ideas and the philosophy behind what we would call liberty weren't something I thought about. But in 2012, I was introduced to Ayn Rand, uh, and that changed everything. So she really is, for many people, a on ramp. Even though there's a lot of anarchists that don't like her, her personal philosophy is one that should very much be looked into, in my opinion. Objectivism at a personal level. Governmentally, like I can't stand all the big objectivists online because governmentally they're neocons.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a personal philosophy, that changed the way I saw things, and that introduced me and let me down the road to reading who Rothbard was. Thank you, Twitter, for introducing me to Rothbard. Then to Mises, and then you just once you go down the rabbit hole, you just keep reading and you keep going. And then you discover YouTube has hours and hours of footage on these subjects that no one watches. So I started going down those rabbit holes. But in 2012, that Atlas Shrugged being given to me by my lieutenant was probably the biggest thing that did it. The thing that was in the back of my mind most of my time was in 2004. We went on a mission, and long story short, I wrote a blog about it. If anyone ever wants to go read it, but long story short is we got attacked, we got ambushed. We did what we do. We destroyed them with overwhelming violence, and come to find out, it wasn't really even bad guys. We were in a part of Afghanistan that Americans hadn't been in yet. So all they thought was we were a occupying force.
Wow.
And so they were doing what any of us would actually do in that situation. You see an army rolling through, you're like, oh, now's the time, pull out the AKs. And we dropped a 500-pound bomb on them. And I don't know, it didn't sit right with me in the beginning, but I was just like, that's my job. Shit happens. Fuck this country. They attacked us 9/11. I don't care. But for a long time, I had problems when I got back, and I didn't know why. And it was that moment. Like once I identified that moment, I could start healing. But until I could put my finger on the moment, because you kind of block a lot of that stuff out. You don't think about it. That began my healing process. And then that was the first seed of doubt. Iraq was the second seed of doubt. I mean, I saw so much fraud, waste, and abuse there. Plus, just the morals of being there in the first place, notwithstanding. And then Atlas Shrugged on my third deployment, working with the Afghan National Army, as a matter of fact. So that was a very different experience too. And when you talk with them, you realize that they just want to have a country too. That's all they wanted. They wanted to fight and have a country and, determine their own course in history. And
how do those guys, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just out of curiosity, like how do those guys jive with y'all? Like, were they pretty open?
90% were pretty cool because they understood that what our purpose, the way they looked at me, because I had a select group I trained by myself. I was the lead trainer. I was the guy that was going to teach them how to be better artillery in order to defend RC South against the bad guys. And so 90% of them I got along with. One of them I had a problem with, but there was never any violence within my group. But in 2012, I don't know if you remember, people were getting killed in what we called green on blue attacks all the time, where you'd be working with your host nation force, which is the green force, us being what we called militarily the blue force, green on blue, they would attack us. So we'd be out on a mission together and they just turn on us. That was happening all the time. Yeah. And so there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to keep your eyes open. So now you're not only looking for enemy combatants, you're looking for the guys that are walking with you on patrol, making sure they're not going to be, turn on you.
Jesus Christ.
So that was a problem. But I made it through that. I went to the gate and picked them up every day. And every day you go to the gate and you're like, okay, I'm going to die now. And then you get back from the gate and you're alive and you're like, okay, cool. Tomorrow, it's just kind of how you think about it.
God damn, dude. That's like constant. I can't imagine that level of stress, just.
Yeah. So I didn't, and that's one of those things that once you go through it, you can't put your finger on why you feel that way. One of the worst military movies ever made was The Hurt Locker. But there's something about that movie, especially in the end, when you sit in the grocery store, just kind of stare off into space. That is real. Like, and you don't know why you're doing it. You don't understand it. You're just like, it's like a dam holding back a bunch of pain. And, you just, it takes everything out of you and it zaps you. It's kind of weird. And it happens to everybody who goes there. Even like the dudes, what we call fobbits, they never leave the fob. They don't go anywhere. They cook the food. They do logistics and stuff like that. Even then, when rocket attacks happen, they come back just a little bit traumatized, because you realize at any moment something could fall from the sky and you're dead.
Right.
So even that's in the back of everybody's mind.
Jesus, dude. Yeah, I have lived a privileged life. Anytime I've been in a not cool situation, it was 100%, something that I signed up for.
Right.
And, man, wow. So what would you say? So you got this book in 2012. Were you deployed at the time when you were reading?
Yeah, I was in Afghanistan. You have a lot of downtime, believe it or not. It's not go 100% of the time. Combat has been described by other people smarter than me as, moments of intensity followed by hours of boredom.
Yeah.
Just mind-numbing boredom. And so learning to deal with that is also another thing. You got to learn how to turn it on and turn it off. And sometimes people get that proverbial switch stuck on, and that's part of their problem. but in 2012, I was reading a lot. My lieutenant was reading a lot. I was reading just basic sci-fi crap, no intelligent works anyway. And he tossed me Ayn Rand, and I started reading it. I was like, oh, okay. And of course, you grow up in a capitalist country, you take it for granted. You don't really understand the principles behind it. They don't really teach you about it in school the way they should.
Mm-hmm.
And so these ideas, the great thing about that book is it tells a story, and sometimes it's a little in your face, like the speech he gives, it's like, okay, you're laying it on thick, but the book itself gives you ideas, if you've never thought about them before, that, change the way you look at things. And like I said, that was the first spiral into what would be called libertarianism.
How did that affect you while on deployment, if at all? Like, did that start to change your mentality towards, going on patrol?
No. I mean, so all 3 times I deployed, I was the same rank. I was a staff sergeant, and I already had a section to worry about. I had men I had to worry about. That was always my. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. That was always my main priority. I didn't really think about other stuff. You don't really start processing those things at a deeper level until you leave. But learning about Ayn Rand, you start Googling intensely. You're looking for more stuff, and you see all the videos of her and of her talking, and then, maybe there's something from Rothbard that pops up, or an article on something else that pops up, and that's how I started clicking around, and I was like, oh, there's these other philosophies. There's these other things. I wrote a blog series on anatomy of the state, and I was going to, from an objectivist point of view, try to prove how stupid it was. And I cold read it. So I wrote a blog per chapter, and you could tell from chapter 1 to chapter 6, each one of my blogs, I'm like, oh, okay. Yep. Okay. I guess I'm a Rothbardian now. It was.
I like it. Okay.
And that was it. That was where I went in deep. Believe it or not, the first time I heard about anarcho-capitalism, I didn't get it, though. It was on the Rubin Report, believe it or not. Early on, when he actually had a bunch of people on, and he wasn't just some mouthpiece for the gay Republicans.
Yeah.
He had some dude on, I don't remember his name, and he was an anarcho-capitalist, and he was talking about his ideas. Like, okay, that sounds great in theory. Cool. Let everybody move across the border freely and let everybody do what they want. No government. Okay, dude, that'll never happen. And when the first time you hear it, it is absurd, right? Like, sure, we'll just all go live our lives peacefully and no one will ever bother us. Okay. But that's where that went. And that led to a reckoning with me trying to reconcile my service with how I feel now. Because I don't look back on, because I touched a lot of lives, and a lot of lives touch me. You meet a lot of people in the Army, and you don't want to look back on that with hate. I look back on it fondly because we're just people. But I don't look back at our purpose fondly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a friend of mine, Scott, was on talking about his time over there. And one of the most jarring things for him was that, he went out of his way to make sure that the civilians were well looked after, and around his, fob. And he talked about, cycling back home. And then when he came back, learning that, that interim, I don't know anything military terminology, so forgive me, but the group of soldiers who were there in the interim had tuned up this family, and really screwed them over. Anywhere from kicking in their doors, destroying their windows. I mean, pretty much destroying their house and then screwing them out of getting, paid for it. And
yes.
Did you have anything like that occur?
No. Being an artilleryman in Iraq, they shut the guns down and we were patrolling in MRAPs. We never did anything like that. We just did security for what's called provincial reconstruction teams.
Yeah.
So they go in there and they basically give away a bunch of taxpayer money to people to rebuild the homes that we blew up, a couple of years previously.
Gotcha.
And that's all we did. And, we got in some ambushes and firefights and stuff, but we never messed with civilians all that much. Like, I talked with an Iraqi policeman, and he was through the translator one time, and I remember, I'll never forget, I didn't understand it at the time. He said, I wish Saddam was back because we had everything going for us when he was here. We had power,
Damn.
you know, because we destroyed their country. Like
Right.
the average person doesn't understand what we did over there. We destroyed all of their infrastructure. And then we thought just tossing money at it would fix it. Nah, man, they were pissed. Like even the people that were happy we were showing up in the beginning later were like, wait, this is a raw deal. Right.
Yeah, this is
And
not
that's
good.
why, yeah, that's why we couldn't you can't defeat an insurgency when everybody hates you. It can't be done.
Man, talk about a tall order right there.
Right.
So yeah, sorry to circle back to that. I was just curious on that part. So when you got back from your last tour, like kind of what did that look like for you? What did your road to your own recovery consist of?
My wife, honestly, strong woman, never gave up on me. Like, but I should probably be living alone in the woods somewhere, honestly. But she never gave up on me, so that was good. Couldn't have done it without her. Had to go to obviously do some therapy. And my kids, like you got to focus on what you got. Like the problem is you're always focused on what's wrong, what sucks, and then you don't stop and think, I'm blessed. Like I own a house, I own some land. I got, enough land to have a farm, some goats and some chickens. I'm blessed. Like there's a lot of people that don't have that.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the secret. You you take it one day at a time, as you well know. And, you hunt the good stuff. I hate that is a phrase that anybody who's gone through resiliency training is going to hate hearing, but it's a good one because it just means quit looking for the bad in every situation. And once you learn to do that normally, like it just becomes normal, look for the good in the situation, it really changes your outlook on a lot of things.
Yeah, man. And the problem with focusing on misery is that hope is seen as a competitor,
Yes.
And it's one of those things that where whenever you mire yourself in that kind of black pill mentality, which man, just going through what you described, it would be hard not to, and it makes me kind of wonder, like, what did this I know what this pandemic did to those of us in the recovery community, but do you have veteran friends who, this really affected them, like just seeing all this overstepping and overreach?
See, I don't know. Almost everybody I talk to on a regular basis through non-Facebook means has been okay. Like I said, when I left Facebook, that's how I kept basically in touch with everybody from all my units that I knew previously. So I don't know, honestly. I got on there once the other day and I had like, the 99 plus mentions in the little drop down right there. And I was like, nah, I'm good. And I closed it.
Yeah. That's
so
a lot.
I honestly don't know. I kind of pulled back because I got to a point where I was trying to give so much to everyone else. I wasn't giving enough to me, wasn't giving enough to my family. So that my priority became that. Then that's when I bought this house and got us out of the city.
Hell yeah, man. So when it comes to your political philosophy the other day, which, I think you and I are kind of in the same boat. Like when I was young growing up, I was not political at all. Like I would just say, some dumbass buzzword, token phrase that was being spewed about that sounded slick. But like when I got in my older years, especially, lately in my adult years, this is where I really refined, my political means, my political philosophy.
Yes.
So where do you sit on that currently?
I mean, philosophically, right? And I'm probably going to upset anybody who hears this. Philosophically, I'm an ANCAP.
Okay.
Realistically, I could live a very happy life if we were living in the ideal, utopian minarchist society. And I think if any of the philosophical ANCAPs thought about that statement, they'd probably agree. Right. So I understand people voting and trying to, staunch the blood flow, so to speak. So one year you may have to vote Republican. I know some that go back and forth, Democrat, Republican, just trying to even things out. I get that, so ideally, yes, I'd like secession down to the man, down to the person, to the individual. But I also understand that since we're forced to live in this system, you got to partake in it. Maybe if you want to change something, because you can't just wish the bad stuff away.
Yeah. Yeah. No. John Phillips, I have a lot of respect for that guy. He's on the LNC last convention, and he showed up to Oklahoma, and I got to talk to him for a minute. And I said, what's your take, anarchism or minarchism? He says, well, today I'm a minarchist, and tomorrow I can be an anarchist.
Right.
I mean, and that's kind of the mentality, and that tracks a lot with, I think, where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. Either one is going to be a damn sight better than what we have now.
Right. Actually, something Spike Cohen said on the campaign trail when he was running that I found to be smart. It was the first time I think I'd heard a mainstream libertarian say it, which was, why are we even talking about anarchism? Look at the size of our state. We're nowhere near that yet. We'll talk about that when we get rid of some of this other stuff, And I think he was right, because I also think of it from a practical point of view. Let's say we could erase the state now. We could hit a magic button. We could make it go away right now. There'd be a few thousand people that would celebrate, and then there'd be a whole lot of people that would be devastated. Mm-hmm. Not just because now the government and therefore technically the country is gone, but because their livelihoods revolve around the federal government because it's gotten so big. What are they going to do now? Is that moral just to take it away from them now? Well, it's not moral to give it to them in the first place, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about what are they going to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, you got, if it's ever going to happen, it needs to be done piece at a time, the same way it was built. I'm not sure that just bringing the whole wall down at once is the right way, or is it even possible?
With your background, especially, having served so much time in the military, what does that next step look like in the right direction?
Oh, I don't know. Localism, really. The federal government's going to do what the federal government does. States are going to do what states do. Hopefully you live in a state that is not intrusive. We both live in a pretty good state in that regard. I mean, we have a state income tax, but that's probably the worst thing I have to say about Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So localism, really, because no matter what the federal government does, at the end of the day, your school board, your mayor, your city council, they have more to say in what happens in your daily life than anything. I realized that when I went to my first local council meeting, right as the COVID was kicking off. I was like, oh, hell no. It's like, I know what's about to happen. And I showed up. All these council members talked, the mayor talked, and then he picked up the gavel and said, we don't need to have a conversation about this, do we? And he slammed it down. And that was they enacted every COVID measure right then. The police started going, knocking on restaurant doors that like immediately afterwards and telling them they had to shut down. Like it was immediate. There was no like announcement in 2 days we'll shut down. It was like now, and then they send armed cops to tell restaurant owners to kick people out of their establishment. I was pissed.
Yeah. And let's, in the red state of Oklahoma, those mm-hmm. cops, not just Biden cops, not blue state mm-hmm. cops.
Yes.
Red correct. State cops. And
yes,
because I saw it out here in my neck of the woods too. I mean, it's just how it was. That was a statewide mm-hmm. thing. Man, I don't know. I don't know how you even quantify that, but it was eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't, it should have been.
Well, they're forgetting though, because here's part of the problem. When George Floyd was killed, he was murdered. A lot of people saw that video and they're like, no, bad. But then, there was these conflicting reports, and all of a sudden all these people who wanted to lick the boot found a way to lick it again. Mm-hmm. And so now even when you tell them, look, if the mayor says you got to do this, that cop's not going to argue with the mayor. He's going to do whatever he has to take to enforce that law or that rule or that edict, that policy. It doesn't matter. They're not your friends. My boss, his son is a cop in town. And so I've talked to him about it too, because his son pulled me over and gave me a ticket one time. And he kept asking me questions. And I don't know if I should say anymore because screw it. I already started. He kept asking me questions. He said, where do you work? And I said, I work at such and such. He's like, okay, where? I was like, here and in this building at this place. He's like, okay, but what's the address? Like, what do you do? I was like, I work for your father. because he didn't, there was no reason for him to be asking me these questions. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to try to bring up his father as a way to get out of the ticket. I was just going to take my damn ticket and go about my merry way. And he pissed me off, and then immediately, as soon as he left, I called him. I was like, hey, I might have been a bit of a smart ass to your son. You're probably going to hear about it. But even then, what people don't understand is if you realize that it is not your job to comply, it is their job to serve. If it's working the way it's supposed to work, that is, we know that that's not the way it is. Then you don't have to answer those questions. But cops use their ability and their respect my authority attitude to do whatever they want. I'm pretty sure he was just trying to figure out if there was some other reason that he could find a pretense to do something. Like, why are you driving such a nice truck if you don't have a good job? And it just ticked me off. And there was no reason. And my kids were in the car too, and they were like, "Dad, chill out. Dad, stop. Dad, stop." But I hate it because I was the same way in the military.
That's one of those things, man. Like, they do have that position, and people are like, "Well, a cop can't do that." Cop can damn well do anything they so choose. Who's going to stop them?
No one's going to stop them. Even when they get caught, someone's going to hand wave it away and say, "Yeah, but he was resisting, so the cop had to hit him 18 times in the head with a baton." And
yeah, man.
No.
Yeah, and
but the crazy thing is, we don't even do that downrange. We don't treat people like that downrange. If we did that to, I've said this to other cop lovers before, and they don't believe me. If I treated an Afghan national the way cops treat Americans, I would have gone to a court martial.
Wow. How did they, and just out of curiosity, like, how did they keep track of your interactions? Like, were they polling the populace, or like, what did they look like?
No. So there's no cameras with us, right? Nor should we have any. That there's just too much going on. But it only takes one person, and there is an extensive whistleblower process. Like, it's not hard to do. Everybody knows who you go talk to for such and such situation. If one of them said something and other people started to write sworn statements saying it happened, then there would be an investigation. Then they would go talk to the people involved in the populace and try to find them and find out what happened. People, there's this misconception. Here's one of the misconceptions: we can just kill civilians with no recourse whatsoever. The average ground soldier, that is. I'm not talking about the drone program. The average ground soldier can go just do whatever they want. No, that is not true. Look up Staff Sergeant Robert Bales. I think it was Bales. Yeah, he was in my brigade. He was a war criminal. It happened while I was there in 2012. He went crazy, walked off the fob, walked into a village and started murking people.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, I've heard rumors that there was an initial attempt to cover up, but I don't believe that, because I think they understood once they got the gravity of the situation, there was no covering it up. There was no way to cover that up. Like, the Afghans put it out to the media. The media got a hold of it before it was ever even announced by our media. It was being announced by other media with pictures, and he went in there and killed women and everybody. Now he's going to be in jail the rest of his life, as it should be.
Yeah.
So there's an extensive way to get people. There's even people, I think, in the heat of combat probably got a raw deal, but they're still in jail because they take it so seriously. And I know that's odd to say, but someone's shooting at you and you shoot back and they're hiding in somebody's house, and a stray bullet goes in there and kills the other person. It's horrible, but I'm not an American cop policing Americans. I was just trying to not be shot and get the hell out of there. We also don't go into those buildings. Well, in the beginning we did, like during the invasion, right? But when that happens, we just drop a bomb anyway. Everybody in that building is going to die. So it doesn't, that's one of the horrors of war people don't understand. But we don't just get to go around killing civilians for no reason. It just doesn't happen. There would be an investigation. It happened in Vietnam too. In Vietnam, whenever those bad things happened, someone would whistle blow and someone would get in trouble and they'd go to jail.
See, and just to compare that to the police today, we see body cameras everywhere. There are all these, and it's my opinion that we just now have a 4K view of exactly how untouchable American police are.
Yes.
That's really the only thing it's done, save a few token cases. But Daniel Shaver, my God. you know.
That video's enraging.
Yeah.
What else is there to say about that hasn't been said already?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see a dude murder a guy and get away with it because he was found not guilty. So I mean,
And got the nice little check pension.
The pension on the taxpayer pension. Absolutely. We live in a clown world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just to specify what I was talking about earlier, I'm not saying that what we were doing in Iraq was good. What I'm saying is there was a lot of people there that sympathized and would allow insurgents into their home because that's their culture. It's actually a cultural thing. In Afghanistan, it's called Pashtunwali. I'm not sure what the doctrine is called in general, but once they let you in their house, they're family. You have to protect them like family. So they would let these insurgents in. They would fire their mortars at us from in the house, thinking that we would not do anything. And in the beginning, we didn't, but then we told them quit doing that. So that's another thing. Like you hear about building destroyed in Iraq. That's what it was. Like a mortarman would come up in the backyard of some family home using, because they know they can't refuse them, and they start shooting mortars, and then they get the whole damn building blown up.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus. It's like a whole damn family's, because somebody played them.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And we shouldn't have. So to clarify, we shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like that should have never happened. Like it shouldn't have ever happened. But if you're shooting at police, the police have a right to shoot back too. Right. Like I'm not one of these guys. It's like police shouldn't have weapons. No, that's not true. They should just quit using them so goddamn much.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. No, and I'm right there with you. As much as I have an undying loathing for modern day police officers, there's a lot of these shoots that I'm like, okay, if I was getting shot at, I would shoot back too. Like I don't expect them to just get killed,
Yes. Nor should you. That I mean, if we're gonna subscribe to natural law, then we have to apply it unilaterally, right? Like if someone's trying to kill a cop can defend himself. I got that. But that doesn't apply in someone's home. If you kick in someone's fucking door, well, you take the lead. Just take it.
Especially if it's the wrong house. By the way, I don't know if you saw that on what was that, Houston here recently. The cops kick in the apartment door and the guy's laying on the couch. It's the wrong effing house, man.
No, it turned out to be the right house. It turned out to be the wrong person.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they had the right address. It just wasn't the right person.
Gotcha.
So it's even worse than that. They kicked down some innocent dude's door, but they were at the right place. Wow. So of course, because they managed to read an address correctly for once, nobody's going to get in trouble.
Yeah, qualified immunity.
Yeah.
And how great is it that has gone away now too? That whole conversation has gone. I just recently saw a campaign for OKC's Mayor David Holt, and I distinctly remember the summer BLM protests and his position on defunding the police. Like he was right there. And he's got the Fraternal Order of Police Union is actually shilling for him on his campaign ad, which is just like, man, that's a mutually, two-faced deal right there. But
none of the people who said defund the police understand or meant it at all.
Fair point.
They just didn't. Should the police have dollars reallocated? Sure. Should you let progressives write your buzzwords? No. Should we take all the MRAPs and all the tanks and all the machine guns that the United States Army has given to the local police, take them all back? Yes, we should. Yeah. They don't need that. They do need training. They need time off. Because I mean, from my understanding, they work those dudes pretty hard, like 10, 12-hour shifts a day, like 4 or 5 days a week. I don't know about that. I could be wrong, but I know they work the shit out of those guys. And I can imagine being frustrated. I remember what it was like being downrange, being frustrated. You're like, fuck, you quit looking at them as people. Sometimes you're like, they just want to kill me. So I get it. And so everybody they pull over, they're like, okay, this guy's a bad guy until proven otherwise. And that's not the hallmark of a free society. It's not. And if they can't do that, then they should quit their job. I mean, read Rise of the Warrior Cop. Rise of the Warrior Cop is an outstanding book that explains exactly what the problem is with these guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, joining the police force, using the same tactics they use downrange, looking at the citizens the same way they looked at the people downrange. They equate them as the same, whether it's a young Afghan boy or a young American boy in the inner city, they look at them the same way, and then one of the first things you do downrange, which is despicable, but you learn to do it anyway, is you dehumanize the people because you may have to kill them. So you dehumanize them.
Little coping mechanism right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and in a way, that's what the police do too. And being a veteran, I can see it. So when I see these incidents and I read about them and I read about the cops' history, and I'm like, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. And this guy should not be doing this job at all.
See, I saw him in county jail. It was always the worst ones that were in there in Oklahoma County Jail were they had a gold shield embroidered on their uniform, and that meant they were a street deputy, and they were the biggest fucking douchebags, man. I mean, and all of them had served overseas, and they all had that mentality, like I am here to f you up, like give me a reason,
and they will. And so one of the things I hear conservatives say a lot is statistically, you've got an average of X number of stops a day. And so therefore the vast majority of them are peaceful. Maybe that's true, but that percentage you just gave me there's no way it can be accurate because not every interaction is televised or filmed or known about or talked about. No one gets in trouble. No one reports it. If a cop can beat somebody ass and said, if you say anything, I'm going to come back and beat your ass again. It's going to happen, and there's no one's ever going to know about it. Cops walk into. I saw a cop get an attitude with someone one time because the guy expected him to pay for his coffee.
Damn.
Because they get this sense of entitlement, because there's these people like, oh, coffee's free to to police, and they just think that's the way it should be everywhere.
Right.
So the sense of entitlement is real. I mean, it's real.
Now, did you, when you came home, did you ever consider or lean towards look at being a police officer here?
No. Ironically, my initial job prospect was going to be Border Patrol because I have a specialization that would have played and worked well into Border Patrol. And I went away from it, thankfully. I'm so happy I did, and went into the contracting world. But police know. Like by then, I already knew what was going on. Like I knew what was going on.
You were red pilled at that point. You were like, nah.
Yeah. There was no way I was going to put that uniform on and police my fellow citizens, and I can't respect anyone who does.
It's a bold statement right there, bud. I like it. Now, what about your veteran friends that you still talk to? Have you been able to red pill them?
Some of them already were. Some of them were big time MAGA guys. I had one Q friend that he's one of the reasons I had to quit Facebook because I just could not quit arguing with him.
Jim Carrey's.
You can only say show me the proof so many times, and then I'm like, okay, dude, I believe you. Show me the proof, right? Okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Quit linking me to these news stories that look like they made that shit up. Show me the proof. And that was rough. But I don't know if I could say I've particularly red pilled anybody from my veteran friends community. I have at work. I still work around green suiters. So I've sent more than a few doubting their existence and purpose, which, kind of sucks for them, but it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. It will. How is that? What does that look like? Like what's your go-to? Like, do you toss them a book? Do you throw them a podcast?
No, just talking. Really, I don't like to throw stuff like, hey, read this or watch this, because no one's going to do that. Nobody has time. Right. While you've got their attention, you need to be talking about it while you've got their attention and let that stuff sink in. And you got to do it in bite-sized chunks. You cannot just dump, anatomy of the state on somebody and be like, so if the government are the Jews and the Jews are the government, then the Jews committed suicide. No one gets that statement, and without a build up to that statement.
Right.
So it's tidbits here, tidbits there. George Floyd helped. The riots helped a lot. I was like, hey, look, the government's letting them do it. I, yeah, we should be against the police violence, but the police are just watching these people burn everything down now, and they're not doing anything about it when this is what they're actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So you show them those little tidbits and you leave it alone. Talk about something else. Next day, you find that little in, you talk about it. I have the opportunity to talk to 30 new faces joining the Army every 7 weeks. And towards the end of class, when things slow down and they've taken most of their tests and you can start talking to them like people again, I will often let them ask questions. Sometimes they'll ask financial questions. I'm like, okay, that's a good question, because for a separate reason, no one gives financial literacy to the new trainees. So there's a trope about privates always getting 30% interest loans and buying a new Mustang as soon as they graduate AIT. It's real. That's a true thing that actually happens. And no one ever talks to them about why that's a bad idea. They just, by the time they've done it, you're like, no, why did you do that? But it's too late. It's done.
Yeah, it's a wrap.
So I use those moments to break in small things too. All right. I'm like, hey, so what is money? Right. What is a store of value? What should you invest in? Do you want to invest in soft money or hard money? Here's the difference. You can find ways without getting political to plant seeds, Yeah. And that's what I do.
I like that, man. I mean, you're in a prime position, especially to utilize that tactic. I like that a lot, man. Overall, let's just look at veterans. What do you think? And something that I see in the Liberty community, it's either disgruntled veterans already, or you have this other. And I obviously you can't paint the whole movement in a broad brush, but you also have this other side who was like, F the military and the troops down to the wire. Like, how do we bridge that gap? How do we, especially those of us who've never served, approach this? Have these conversations?
I don't know. Like I was talking with that guy on Twitter the other day, which is what spawned my tweet that you picked up on. And he's under the impression that everybody joins the Army. Well, there was two people I was talking with. One said, if they join the Army, they understand that they may have to kill and therefore they're fuck up, right? And then another was like, they only join the Army to kill. Well, I think I finally pissed that guy off enough to where he blocked me, trying to just hit him with the facts. This other guy's statement is a little bit more nuanced because it's technically correct. Like we all join, may not be our purpose for joining, but we all do join with the understanding that, there's a certain percentage based on my job that I may end up having to kill somebody. That does not make them a bad person because there's a certain things that I have here in civilian life that I would be perfectly acceptable killing somebody over. You break into my house and threaten my family, I'm going to kill you. And I'm willing to accept that responsibility onto myself.
Right.
So I think it's a disingenuous way to look at soldiers saying, they know there's a possibility they'll have to kill because you don't understand that they are not red-pilled. Those soldiers think they are serving a purpose greater than themselves because that's what we were all taught as young kids, to be patriotic and love our country. And a lot of people, when they join the Army, they really do it for the most what they consider sincere of reasons. And I know because I did it. When I joined, I was, yay, Captain America. I loved everything about America. Now, don't take that to say that I hate everything about America. We're still pretty damn fortunate. But, it's complicated. It's complicated. But they don't join for that purpose. They do join with the understanding that they could have to do it. So what? I could have to do it going to the grocery store tomorrow because I carry. Anyone who carries could end up having to do that. I mean, are you just let somebody kill you when you have access to a gun? No, exactly. So I think it's a disingenuous way of looking at it. There are people within certain communities that have a higher level of knowledge, training, like officers, for example. Officers know what they're doing. They know why they're doing it. They understand the implications. For 4 years prior to actually going active duty in the Army, they're going to college to learn how to be an officer through like either West Point, the Virginia Military Institute, ROTC, these other options. So I judge them a little differently. But your average enlisted person that joins because they don't want to go into debt for college. They'll do 4 years and they'll get college money, and then they realize, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm good at it. It's very regimented. I've definitely got a paycheck on the 1st and 15th of every month. I can go to college for free while I'm in. A lot of people don't know about that our tax dollars pay for that. So they can get their degree while they're in, go into night school, and then they'll get out and still have the GI Bill and go get higher education. So a lot of people stay in longer than their initial enlistment to finish their degree while they're in. I'm not going to hold that against them. I mean, should the government be doing it? No, of course not. But they are. And if somebody's taking advantage of it, why am I going to think less of them? I know,
right.
But I'm biased, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the incentives that are dangled out there, and, and do judges still give the option for people who got jammed up on a criminal conviction to go
on occasion?
So,
yes.
So that's another part of it. That's another. I mean, I definitely can't fault somebody wanting to join the military as opposed to going to prison.
I knew a guy when I was a young private. I knew a guy. He joined for that reason. I think he stole like a backhoe back home or something and got caught. Just being drunk and driving a backhoe around a field that wasn't his. And the judge was like, all right, dipshit, join the Army. So he did. 4 years later, and this is after I had already PCS'd, I heard about it after the fact. He was driving down the road drunk with a new guy in the vehicle. The guy had his head out the window because they were just driving around Louisiana being stupid. And he lost control of the vehicle and decapitated the guy on a tree.
Shit.
So those aren't the soldiers we need in the Army. Once again, we shouldn't have an Army. Yes, I understand the ideological purity but if we have one, we should be selective. We should not be letting the criminals in. That doesn't mean criminals are bad people, obviously. It just means that when you're 18 years old, if you've already made certain decisions and you need to go break those bad habits, because believe it or not, the Army doesn't actually do anything for you. The Army gives you tools to do something for yourself. That's what it does. People don't understand. They think that some drill sergeant's going to yell in your face and transform you into this magical human being that's capable of all these feats, of bravery. That's not true. They know how to unlock certain things and allow you to do it yourself.
Yeah.
That's it. So if you don't already have a bit of the goodness in you, and you haven't dedicated yourself to that, I'm not sure. With only a couple of times, there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think that it should be way more selective. We should shrink the Army. We should be more selective about who we take in. Raise the test scores necessary, because you have to take a test to join the Army. It's called an ASVAB. In my old MOS, they dropped the score requirements like significantly. I want to say they did it during the surge because they needed people, and they never brought them back up. So, I mean, we've got people in there who can't do basic math sometimes. So here I am spending my time teaching them how to do stuff that they should already know how to do. It's rough, man. And then it's our job to make sure they pass.
Jesus Christ, man. So were you deployed at the time that you saw this influx of people coming in?
No.
No? Okay.
They didn't work with me. They went to a lot of units to replace people that were getting hurt, and then they got filtered out that way. So we would get a new guy between deployments, and then we'd know by the time we deployed if he was going to work or not, what we would do with him. But never while we were there. It's not like that. So it's not like World War II where you're there for 4 or 5 years. You're not there for the duration of the war. So you're not getting people cycle into your unit while you're in country that often.
Okay.
You go back, you've got a year of training, reset of your equipment, fix everything that gets broken in the desert, and then you go back. In that year, you get your new people, and so you've trained them, them, there should be trust developed by then. So it's not like Vietnam where you were getting draftees just showing up like, okay, you're in that platoon, and then you don't know this guy. It wasn't like that.
Okay, that's good. That is a good thing. That would be a fucking nightmare, man. Oh,
I mean, it happens. Like a new guy will PCS in like the first month of a unit's deployment. Within the first 3 months, they'll send people. Like if you show up, they've got planes flying out for the first 3 months. But it's probably either a dude that he's already seasoned and he just changed duty stations, so he's good to go, or they'll get somebody in and they'll put them on the shitty details so they don't ever go out the wire. But for the most part, yeah, there's no cycling like on MASH or anything like that. Where you like show new people shows up. Haha, I'm your commander now. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Okay, that's good. That is a good thing. Well, man, this has been a really great conversation. You definitely have a knack for having these types of discussions. Before we cut on out of here, what message would you like to give to the broader Liberty community about our next pathway forward?
Quit living in Afghanistan in your head, man. Like we don't live there. We don't. You can be as ideologically pure as you want. It doesn't solve any problems here and now. And people want problems solved. They don't want to hear about how they should have reacted in the situation. They want their problems solved. So it is our job to explain to them that the government doing less is better for them. And it solves the problems that the government already created, right? 90% of your problems the government created. More government isn't going to fix that problem. Quit living in Afghanistan in your head because people don't want to hear, well, let's just abolish the government. No. The Dave Smith approach, I think, is the right approach, right? I don't know what people – I know a lot of people that's very controversial. But he does a good job of separating where he thinks we should be with where we are. Where we are is here. Here's the steps we can take for meaningful change here and now. Here's where we want to be. These steps could lead us to where we want to be. That's what we need to think about, in my opinion.
I agree. That's solid course. Dave is phenomenal. I mean, he is great about taking that message to the broader audience. If we could just get the internal conflict set aside for a minute.
Right. Oh,
God.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for hanging out. And anytime you want to come back on, buddy, you always got an open invite.
Okay, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, there you go. Thanks a lot, Red, for coming on, buddy. You did a great job. That was a great conversation, and I thoroughly believe that we really need to play to each other's strengths. Where I stand out with criminal justice reform and drug policy, people like Red stand out on discussing the horrors of what happens whenever we go to war for profits. What happens to people, not only abroad, but what we're doing to our own brothers and sisters here at home that we're sending overseas to fight these battles. This is a conversation that was sobering, to say the least, but they're necessary to have. And so thanks a lot, Red, for having the courage to come on and have that discussion. And that's going to do it for this week, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Sure do love you guys out there. Hope that this next week treats you well. And I figured that a great song to accompany with this episode would be Against Me. This song is called From Her Lips to God's Ears. And it's about the war in Iraq, man. It's just a great punk song. I hope you guys enjoy it. So without any further ado, here is Against Me.
Dancing war for dancing soldiers. What are we gonna do now? De-escalation through military force. Increase the pressure. Afghanistan, what should we do about the situation in Iraq, in North Korea? Afghanistan. Under martial law, good for